Chapter 8. Frances perched on the edge of her seat, waiting and wondering. Would Reverend Diller be able to find Eddie? There was no doubt in Frances's mind that Eddie was used to taking care of himself. What if he was hiding somewhere on the train? What if he got off at the next stop and ran on his own? How could she even hope to find him and bring him back? Frances keenly felt the heavy responsibility she had taken on. It was her duty to deliver these children safely. Her wrist ached, and she absently rubbed it. She couldn't help wondering why Reverend Diller had awakened so frightened. Well, she had no time to worry about that now. Where was Eddie? Finally, just as the train began to slow to a stop at the depot, the Reverend returned with Eddie in tow. Frances had hoped Eddie would be firmly spoken to, but she doubted it because the boy was still jaunty and greeted her with a wide smile. "Sorry, miss, that you worried about me," he said. "Didn't think I'd be missed. I had to go exploring. I like to see where I am and what's going on around me." "I understand your curiosity, Eddie, but you must not leave the car," Frances told him. According to the conductors, Eddie explored the train from one end to the other, Reverend Diller said. Frances caught a twinkle of merriment in the Reverend's eyes. "And a mighty fine train it is, too," Eddie put on. "Oh, miss, can you believe it? There's a car that's got velvet curtains with gold fringe thick as padding on the seat to make you think you were sitting on something as soft as a duck's bottom." "A private car?" Reverend Diller asked. "Yeah, private. That's what they said before they threw me out," Eddie answered. "They threw you out?" Frances was indignant. "It's okay with me, miss," Eddie said cheerfully. "I got a right to go exploring, and they have a right to throw me out. It's nobody's loss. Give me half a chance, and I'll do it again." "How many people were traveling in this car?" Reverend Diller asked. Eddie shrugged. "Oh, all I could see was a man and his wife. Oh, and a feller working for him." The train was slowing, and Frances had no time to spend in idle chatter. "Thank you, Reverend Diller, for your help," she said, and let Eddie join the other children, who were already bouncing on their seats, waiting for the train to come to a complete stop. From the car's windows, Frances could see the small wooden depot next to the tracks. She knew from her experience as an orphan train rider the large water tank next to the depot would be used to replenish the train's water supply. Some of the firewood in the huge pile near the water tank would be transferred to the train. Only sparse, dusty clumps of grass grew in the yellow dirt around the depot. And there were passengers in sight, but a row of privies. No passengers in sight, but a row of privies stood back by a small grove of trees. "We'll form two lines to the privies," Frances told them, the children, as the conductor opened the door. "Aggie'll take the boys, and I'll take the girls. We won't have much time before the train leaves. No dawdling." As she left the train, Frances saw Eddie glance at her wrist, where her sleeves had fallen back. "What happened to you, miss?" he asked, pointing toward the red marks on her skin. "How'd you hurt yourself?" "It was an accident," Frances said, and pulled her cuff into place. "No harm done." Eddie ran to join the rest of the line, but Frances paused, placing fingers on her left hand over the marks. Once again she wondered what had frightened Reverend Dillard so. There was no time to think any more about it. Frances had to shepherd the children back onto the train and count them, and make sure no one had strayed beyond the small depot or the grove of trees beyond. Finally each child was seated, and then the train made its jerking, swaying start. As it picked up speed, Frances opened her journal and began to write. "How greatly I am reminded of my own journey west. Riding on Orphan Train again, even though it's a different capacity, makes me feel that I've come full circle. I think of the happy years I had with the Cummingses, a highly successful journey, and I hope that I can guide these little ones in my care into journeys that will be as happy as mine." Eddie slid into the seat beside Frances, and she closed the journal. "Sam and Marcus said I was in big trouble with you because of me going off to explore the train," he told her. Frances smiled at him. "You're not in trouble with me, Eddie." "You sure?" "Of course I'm sure." Eddie glanced at Frances and grinned sheepishly. "Trouble and me, well, we sort of stick together, I guess." "Maybe if you thought first," Frances began. Eddie interrupted. "I know, but I don't think first. Never have." He sighed again. "You've never been in trouble, or you know what I mean." The train swayed around the curve, throwing Eddie and Frances off balance. As soon as they righted themselves, Frances smiled and said, "Where'd you live in New York City?" "Nowhere," Eddie said. "I mean just anywhere I could sell a few newspapers, shine a few shoes, earn enough to buy some food, and stay alive." "When I was your age, I lived near 16th Street and 9th, Frances said. "You know that place?" "Do I ever?" Eddie looked at Frances in surprise. "After my father died, I scrubbed floors at night. My mother and I sewed piecework during the day. My brothers Mike and Danny shined shoes." "Like me," Eddie said. "Like you, only Mike turned into a copper stealer and got caught. He wasn't a bad boy, he was a hungry boy. Forgot the difference between right and wrong. He used the money to buy meat for our family's table." Eddie's eyes were wide. "He'd go to prison?" "No, he would have, but the judge let Reverend Brace send Mike west to a new home. He gave Mike a second chance to make a good life for himself." Eddie leaned into the crook of Frances's arm. In a quiet voice he asked, "Did anyone want Mike? After what he'd done, I mean?" Frances decided not to mention the terrible time Mike had with the Friedrichs. Eddie didn't need to know that. He needed reassurance. An army captain and his wife eventually became Mike's foster parents, and they're good to him. He loves them very much. Eddie thought a moment. They didn't know Mike had trouble with the law? They knew, but they still wanted Mike. In fact, it was Captain Taylor who told Mike the West was a new place for new beginnings, and that what counted most was what Mike wanted to make of his future. "His future? I never gave any thought to a future," Eddie said. "It seems just enough trouble trying to stay alive." Frances hugged him. "You'll soon have a family that'll see to it that you have a good future." Eddie turned to look at Frances. "They won't hold what I did against me?" "They won't even know about it." She thought that would satisfy Eddie, but he said, Sam told us that some lads aren't chosen, they have to go back. That happens only to a very few. You'll be chosen, Frances promised. Please, she thought, please let my promises come true. Eddie grinned and Frances smiled back. Eddie wasn't the kind to be down for long, no matter how bad things might look. I'll change my ways, he said. Matter of fact, I start changing them back in New York City. Like going exploring, Frances teased. I said I started changing them. It's hard to do all that changing at once. Captain Taylor said Mike was a fine young man. You are too, Eddie. There'll be lots of good things in life for you, Frances said. Aggie suddenly appeared at Frances' side. Miss Kelly, some of the little children are getting hungry, like Lizzie. Mary Beth said I didn't know what I was talking about, but I know when a baby gets fussing because she's hungry. I know a lot more than Mary Beth knows. And you did say I was sort of in charge when we were going. When are we going to feed the little ones? Frances pulled out her pocket watch and glanced at. It's not quite noon yet, she told. But I think we are all getting hungry, she told Aggie. I'll open the hamper if you'd like. Since you're my special assistant, you can give everyone an apple, except Lizzie and Nellie, of course. We'll peel and chop their apples. We get apples? Now Aggie's eyes lit up with anticipation. Along with bread and cheese, Frances said. She and Aggie set to work giving the food to the children. Some of the adults in the back of the car brought out food they'd brought with them, but Frances knows Reverend Diller had nothing to eat. Frances motioned to him and he came to the front of the car. Please join us. We have plenty to share, he said. He looked away in embarrassment. I was in a hurry to leave. Didn't think about packing food. Oh, please share with us, Frances said. Daisy Gordon piped up. Miss Kelly, David's already started to eat, and we didn't say a blessing. Jessie nodded. At the asylum, we always say a blessing. Frances turned to Reverend Diller. Will you lead the children in prayer, please? She folded her hands and prepared to pray, but he nodded and toward Daisy and said, I'd like to hear this little girl lead the prayer. She'd be happier with the prayer she's used to than the long blessed preachers say. Daisy didn't need prompting. In a loud sing-song voice, she recited, Bless us, O Lord, for thy bounty, which we are about to receive. She smiled, shouting, Amen, and bit with a crunch into her apple. Reverend Diller took the food Frances had given him back to his seat, and while Frances sat by the window enjoying the bread and the cheese and the scenery and the soft rolling hills, but a cry from deep within her heart shattered the moment of peace. Oh, Johnny, how much I miss you.